Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, pleasure to be back on the show.
John, why did Wolfden resources drop last week just as the resource juniors developed an uptick?
Well, Jim, there are two questions inside that question. I'll deal with the first one first. Something has happened in the junior resource sector in the past few days. Monday, of course, was a holiday, Canada's Thanksgiving holiday. Last week, the average traded, or the total traded value of resource listings on the TSX Venture Exchange ranged between $40-50 million. That's 30 to 40% of the total value traded, meaning that the non-resource listings were still where all the action was on the TSX Venture. But on Tuesday, the resource sector traded value shot to $150 million, representing 67% of the total traded value. Now, $68 million of that was due to Neo Lithium Corp, which owns the Tres Quebradas lithium project in Argentina, which has been taken through the pre-feasibility study. It received a $960 million Canadian friendly takeover bid from Zijin Mining, the Chinese mining company that has done a number of takeovers involving Canadian resource juniors. Now, this is a very significant development because Neo Lithium had raised $30 million back in 2017 when we had our first big hype cycle with regard to the electric vehicle that was going to take over the world, and then that sort of subsided, and lithium carbonate prices sagged from sort of $12 a pound range all to as low as $2.50. But all of that has changed. Lithium carbonate prices are now higher than they were 4 years ago, and China itself is realizing this we don't have enough lithium for our own needs. Now, at the beginning of the year, in the first quarter, there was a lot of lithium-related financings that were triggered by the election of the Biden administration and the shift to clean energy. And there was already the evidence that the electric vehicle adoption by consumers and the production of them by the car companies was accelerating a lot faster than anybody had anticipated. But after about April or May, the market seemed to lose its whole enthusiasm for the whole clean energy sector. Gold itself had an attempt at a breakout in late May when we started seeing the inflation effects of the post-pandemic recovery as consumers came back and started consuming stuff again. But then from like June onwards, it's been terrible for the resource juniors. They have faded. They have not got any market responses to exploration results, and the metals in general tracked sideways. But in September and starting in late August, we started seeing metal prices rise, especially the more exotic metals that either come from China or pass through China and being processed from concentrates into the forms that are needed by users around the world. And then China developed its own electricity problem, first because it shut down coal mines that were that had accidents, and they wanted to stop having to report deaths, and that recreated an electricity a shortage because the coal price went up and the power companies weren't allowed to increase the price of electricity, so they just stopped, we're not going to burn coal at these prices and lose money. And that resulted in iron prices collapsing, but aluminum prices soaring to record levels because all these plants had to shut down, and yet the world was still consuming all these materials. And this past weekend, China got another blow when major flooding in key coal-producing regions shut down dozens of coal mines, displaced 100,000 people, and the thermal coal price went through the roof, and China has given up beating up Australia because it dared to ask what really was the source of this COVID situation. They are now allowing thermal freighters with thermal coal to unload their cargo because they need this coal. But what's happening out there is the realization that these supply chain bottlenecks, they're just not resolving itself. Yesterday, the value traded dropped to $107 million for the resource juniors, but that was still double what it was last week. And yesterday we got the CPI figures, and it had been 5.3% year over year for the past few months, and it was 5.4%, meaning that the transitory nature of these price increases was not coming to an end. And while, in the past 3-4 months we had all this talk that, yes, the higher prices are a result of an imbalance between surging consumer demand and the inability of the manufacturers to supply the goods because they're still bogged down in COVID protocols and the other problems created by last year's disruptions. But the thinking was this should resolve itself soon enough, balance itself out, but it isn't. And now the word transitory, well, nobody really wants to use it anymore, but if they do want to use it, they are using it with not just the, 3 to 4 month, 6 month period. This is going to be a lot longer. We now have the conditions in place for a wage cost price spiral similar to what we saw in the 70s. We have a lot of workers who are disgruntled by especially in the younger generations. They're not super eager to go back to work with lousy jobs. And in the 70s, it was the unions that were behind the cost of living adjustment clauses, threatening strikes all the time, causing wages to go up as prices of goods and energy went up, and that pushed it up back then. The unions have since been pretty much destroyed and aren't really a factor except when it comes to civil servants. But today it is this sense that the older generations aren't doing anything about climate change that is serious. It's all pretend. So we're going to insist on higher wages. If you want us to work for a kind of a futureless future, we want to be paid now so that we don't want to sacrifice now for future benefits because you're not making it clear that there will be any. So we have the ingredients in place. And yesterday, Biden apparently coaxed Walmart, FedEx, UPS, and all that to adopt a 24/7 shift to move goods into the markets. A lot of companies ordered goods, lots of goods, but because of the bottlenecks with shipping and even in production, they have been slow to arrive. But now they have the problem that as the holiday shopping season arrives, these goods are showing up, but the workers aren't there to move them into the hands of consumers. So again, if they want to have people working really lousy shifts 24/7, they're going to have to pay up. So everything's in place for inflation to persist. And that's why gold yesterday jumped $30 or so. It's now back at $1,800. And what started on Tuesday with the sort of broader base metals and the specialty metals that are affected by the problems in China has now spread to the precious metals, which have rebounded. Obviously, palladium and platinum are not going to benefit because the car manufacturers are still unable to operate at full capacity. They have had to shut down production lines, which means they don't need the platinum and palladium for the catalytic converters in their internal combustion engines. But there is a sense now today was strong in the market too. We've had 3 days of strength in the resource junior sector. The inflation story is now not going to go away for at least 6 to 12 months. And the market interest is sweeping back into resource juniors. So you would think, why would Wolfden be down in the midst of all this? Well, Wolfden's problem was last week they put out an announcement that the Maine Land Use Planning Commission had rejected its application to rezone a portion of the Picket Mountain project for an underground mine. And this, they had done a PEA, 1,000 tons per day. They submitted it last year. This Land Use Commission wanted to see all the details of what it was going to look like, and the company accommodated them, put it all there. But it turns out that the Land Use Commission is this bizarre bureaucratic entity in Maine, staffed by people with no connection to the rural part of Maine where the project is located, and they are much more beholden to environmental and activists who live in places like Boston and elsewhere, and they decided that they didn't really want to be on the hook for all the complaints that might come from these activists who are against mining. They're all for mining in other places where the costs can be dumped on people elsewhere. It's your standard not in my backyard mentality. So they said, we want more information. And the problem was the kind of information they wanted related to the milling and tailing storage facility is the kind that you produce in a feasibility study. And the entity that has jurisdiction over approving mines in Maine is the Department of Environmental Protection, which is a completely separate entity. So this planning commission really is only in charge of the unorganized territory of Maine, which is basically anywhere where there isn't a township out in the wilderness where just logging takes place. And these guys just didn't want the responsibility, the heat for saying, yeah, we're going to rezone this, even though the Department of Environmental Protection, with the new mining law reform that was made formal in 2017, is going to be the one that makes sure everything gets done according to contemporary environmental standards. So it was a very strange situation, and yesterday Wolfden withdrew its application after going through all the comments back from the Land Use Commission. It appeared that they just didn't want to have anything to do with rezoning for a tailings facility and for a mill. And that puts the company back to where it was when they acquired this project in 2018 after the mining law reform. At the time, it was sort of 4 million tons, and they knew that they wanted to do additional drilling to see if they could make it bigger, ideal double it. So far, they haven't really doubled it. It's probably going to be around 6 million tons. It's enough to support a 1,000 ton per day standalone operation. But the original scenario always considered that maybe we will just have to build a mine and ship the ore, because it's like $400 plus per ton rock, ship it to somewhere else where it can be processed and the tailings disposed of. So they have now withdrawn the application. It became clear from all the objections from the land use staff that they did not like the fact that they had to rezone for a tailings facility, and they're going to look around, try and find some other place that they could truck it to where the people are willing to have this facility, who trust that the Department of Environmental Protection will do a proper job making sure that there aren't going to be water contamination issues. And of course the stock took a hit because it looks like Maine's mining law reform was a big head fake. It wasn't real. It wasn't sincere. It is still supposed to be a place where people do clear-cut logging and shoot moose, but we'll have to wait and see. As far as Wolfden's concerned, they ironically are drilling on the big silver project, which is near Pembroke in the southeastern corner of Maine, and they're also about to start drilling on the California silver project in New Brunswick. And both of these are breccia pipe systems that have only been superficially explored in the past. In New Brunswick, it was because they were looking for VMS systems, and they found this high-grade silver mineralization that didn't make sense to them. And the project, similar to the geological model, is similar to what Oloro is pursuing in Bolivia. These are going to be underground mines, both in New Brunswick and in Maine. And of course, in Maine, you're not allowed to have any open pit mine, but they're looking at tonnage footprints of 20 to 40 million tons. So in the case of Maine, well, if they were going to have so much difficulty with the 1,000 ton per day underground mining operation, what about one that's going to be about 10 times that capacity? Might there not be a problem? Well, the difference is that the Big Silver project is in a township where the land use rezoning is run by a different organization, not an elite group of people off in some coastal area divorced from the rural reality of people wanting jobs in their neighborhood. So Wolfden took a hit. It's 15, 16 cents. Picket Mountain is not dead. They have to come up with a way of not building a mine within the or a milling facility within the unorganized territory, and get this thing back on the road, and whatever extra work they do with regard to feasibility, this should be geared to the actual permitting process that the Department of Environmental Protection is responsible for, and which does have the talent on board to oversee such a process, whereas this land use commission that's in charge of unorganized territory, they just don't have what it takes to supervise a permitting process.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, last week you gave us an update about SK Mining and the Golden Triangle situation. Yesterday, SK Mining gave us an update and the stock was slow to respond, but it is moving today. Did we learn anything new?
Well, we haven't heard anything since mid-September from SK Mining Corp. Certainly no assays. So last week I thought, well, it's time to provide an update. The Golden Triangle is shutting down. Snow had arrived early in September. It's this ironic situation where those companies that needed cold weather in the first quarter of this year had a slow start because of the warm winter, and then they ended up being kicked out sooner than normal because of an early spring thaw, and now we've got it backwards with the winter storms arriving early up in the Golden Triangle. And the company has now finished its program and put out a press release saying that it has completed about 78% of the 30,000 meters that it planned to drill. That's 23,500 meters in 98 holes. And they provided a sort of a verbal description of what they had accomplished. And you really needed to be a geologist to understand the nuances in that. There were no assays. The assay labs are still very slow. They've received partial results for different holes, which of course they can't do anything with, and it makes no sense to them why they got some of these batches and not others. It's not like they prioritized anything, which doesn't make any difference these days anyways. So the stock was slow to move, to respond yesterday. But as people digested the information, it has started to move today, and it's also catching this, what appears to be, the turnaround in resource sector sentiment. And the big things that I saw in the news release is that in the TV Jeff area, where they originally focused and were hoping to find a higher up exhalative horizon for the replacement mineralization that they had intersected earlier. Quentin Henney had done that cartoon showing how what they had intersected related to a feeder system that ultimately spewed its payload onto the ocean floor. Well, they've since concluded that no, those were events that happened before the layers, the horizons built up within this former marine basin. But the important thing is in between the Jeff and TV areas, they discovered a massive sulfide zone that is clearly exhalative, and it is at a younger horizon than what they encountered last year. And that's really important, because what this means is that within this general area of several kilometers in the TV Jeff area, there were multiple episodes of fluid flow. And when you have this happening, the younger ones, they pass through what was available, put down earlier when the seafloor was, at its level, so many million years earlier. And as it goes through, the fluids can harvest mineralization that was previously deposited, redissolve it, remobilize it, and carry it up to the higher level. And SK Creek 1, the 21B zone, it's at the youngest level, and after that level, there was a big basaltic flow which just paved over everything, and that was the end of the VMS activity in that region. So finding this at a younger horizon in an area where they already have evidence of earlier episodes, that really enhances the prospectivity of that area. And I think once they've put out all the assays, and these will come trickling in over the next 3-4 months. It could be early March before they have everything together. I think this will set the stage for a major program next year that will be much more focused in terms of the audience watching. Where are you drilling? What is taking shape? They also reported on the southern end in that C10 Vermilion Spearhead area. The whole project is about 25 kilometers long. That's 25 out of a 30-kilometer long basin, with the 21B zone, SK Creek 1, at the very northern end where Skeena is reviving that whole project. At the southern end, the rocks had been metamorphosed, and they've now, through whatever the rock geochemistry and that, confirmed that, yes, indeed, this is the same stratigraphy as we're seeing in the TV Jeff area, and that exists at the northern end by the SK Creek area. The metamorphism is from an intrusion that cooked it later on, so that really shouldn't affect what it is. And the drilling that they've done, again, it's all just sort of qualitative descriptions they've given. They do have massive sulfide mineralization in this Vermilion area, so this is another major new center they're looking at. And they confirmed that up in the northeastern, on the eastern limb, which is about 6-7 kilometers east of where SK Creek 1 is, they have identified 1,500 meters of massive sulfide type mineralization in the surface. They did not have a drill permit to be able to drill that this year, but this is emerging as a major target. It's associated with a big Bleg gold anomaly. There's been very little, if any, work done in this area, and that is in the eastern anticline versus the main central SK anticline, and that will also receive attention later, next year, next summer, when they have the permits and are able to go in there. But the problem, much of this whole valley that is the SK project, it's quite high in elevation. The snow started arriving in September. They have shut down. There isn't any more physical work that they can do, but they have assembled such an abundance of information that as the assays come in and they give us the sections and plans, they did not include any drill plans or sections in their press release, which of course leaves the market guessing as to what they did or didn't accomplish. But I think this is now going to shape up to being different from your usual Golden Triangle story, where you get a flurry of excitement in September, October, and then it all fizzles away until 6 months later when it resumes. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on SK Mining Corp as it unveils what it accomplished this year with the biggest single-year program that this project has ever seen, and this time driven with the insights of John de Decker, who is an expert in these VMS systems, whereas previous operators didn't really have a concept of how the VMS systems worked in this area. And so even when they managed to intersect something interesting, they didn't know how to follow it up. So the stock's on the rise now. People are waking up. They're realizing there's going to be a flow of results. They've given enough clues that there's going to be at least silver mineralization. They can't tell with the gold because that's typically mixed in with the sulfides. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think it's now also catching that wave of a general turnaround. It's only 3 days that we've had of this changed sentiment, but the bigger picture is one which suggests that, strong gold prices, shortages in raw materials, higher metal prices in general, and this shift to more diversified supply chains going all the way back to the raw materials. This is not something that will be done overnight. This will take several years to do, and it will result in higher prices for inputs, which will be passed on to consumers. So there is just absolutely no way to avoid visible inflation without tanking the economy and creating a depression. And that is not what anybody wants to do.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.